scrap of fly-spotted mirror that was propped on the old chest of drawers. "Look at yourself," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "You're 18, Ruby, and yet you look as old and worn out as me." Her tone softened, and there were tears in her eyes as they regarded each other's reflection. "You gotta learn to dodge them fists, Ruby, and you gotta keep your gob shut or he'll kill you one day, just like he killed that poor innocent little baby you was carrying." Ruby flinched at the words that struck so deeply, but determinedly masked her emotions. To give in to the pain and the sorrow would be her undoing, and nothing could turn back the clock and save her precious baby. "He said he was sorry," she replied as she turned away from the mirror, "and he promised he wouldn't thump me again." She sniffed back the tears. "I gotta believe him, Mum," she whispered. "His promises don't mean nothing, and you know it," her mother retorted. Ruby looked into her mother's careworn face and silently acknowledged this truth before she embraced her. "You know what it's like, Mum," she murmured. "There's no point in going on about it." Ethel remained silent as they held one another, perhaps remembering her own black eyes and bruises that had been meted out by Ruby's stepfather, Ted Wiggins. "At least Ted's gone for a soldier," she said eventually, as she drew back from the embrace and shot her daughter a wry smile. "It's just a pity your Raymond don't do the same, then we both get a bit of peace." "Well, that ain't gonna happen, is it?" she replied with a sigh. "Ray's got flat feet and poor eyesight. The army wouldn't have him. For all his bluff and bluster, he ain't worth a light to no one but them cronies of his what run the black market." Ethel sniffed with derision and folded her arms more tightly beneath her scrawny chest. Ruby silently agreed with her, but would never dare voice it. Ray's fragile pride had been severely dented by the rejection, making him a very angry man. And even in her silence, she was terrified he would imagine he could see the same scorn in her eyes that his uncles had shown when he'd been assigned to the Home Guard. It was like walking a knife edge every day, and she wondered if she would ever learn how to endure it. Ethel seemed to realise there was no point in carrying on this conversation and reached into her apron pocket. "I brought the last of my face powder," she said as she handed Ruby the tarnished compact. "You need to cover them bruises." Ruby gingerly dusted the powder over the yellow and purple bruises and eyed her reflection without much joy. She'd been quite pretty once, with lively green eyes, a cheery smile and shining hair the colour of cobnuts. Now she looked dowdy and drained of any spark of life, and living in this shabby room with a man who could lose his temper in a heartbeat was slowly defeating her. Ethel seemed to read her thoughts, and her expression softened into weary acceptance. "You made your bed, girl, and now you gotta lie in it, just like we all do." She sighed and gently cupped Ruby's cheek with her work-roughened hand. "It ain't easy being a woman, love, but you always got me to turn to when things get too bad." Ruby momentarily nestled her cheek into the warm hand, and then turned away. Her mother could do very little but patch her up and offer tea and sympathy, and if Ray caught her here, there'd be ructions again. "We gotta go, Mum." She returned the compact, slipped on a knitted cardigan, and picked up her cheap handbag. "I'll stay and clean the place up a bit," said Ethel, as she eyed the grubby bed and polished one of the brass knobs with the hem of her pinafore. "Don't want him coming home to this and losing his temper again." Ruby gave a deep sigh. "Better not, Mum. You know he don't like you coming in here." "Comes to something when a mother ain't allowed to visit her only daughter," sniffed Ethel. "If your dad were alive, he'd have his guts for garters, and no mistake." Ruby didn't reply as she held the door open and waited for her mother to step outside. Her dad had been a tough, no-nonsense docker who had never raised a hand to Ethel or Ruby, and considered men that did to be beneath contempt. He would certainly have defended Ruby and seen to it that Raymond got a taste of his own medicine. But he'd been dead for over 10 years, and there was little point in wishing things were different. She and Ethel had both made mistakes, and now they had no choice but to live with them. Ruby locked the door and dipped her chin so her hair fell forward and shadowed her